Well, hello, welcome to Preview Show 1 ahead of round 1 of the, I was going to say the RBS Six Nations, the NatWest Six Nations, of course, as it is this year. Very good getting the sponsor in early, aren't I? They'll appreciate that.
Take those boxes.
Yeah. My name's Nick Heath, this is Tom May, of course. Great to have your company watching. We are coming to you from Soho in London and the wonderful Bar Italia. The Pelledri family, no less, own this one. Bit of a Six Nations connection. We're grateful to Luca and the staff here as well. But Jake Pelledri, not in the Italian squad this weekend, but the guys here hoping he'll feature.
Yeah, and there's obviously a lot, on the ceiling. There's lots of cycling paraphernalia hanging from the ceiling. They're obviously keen on this sport, and how random that we found this place.
Not random, totally planned. Totally planned. Good to have you with us. We're going to run through basically the games. We had our little live preview earlier so that you guys could let us know what you think of the big talking points ahead of round 1. You may have seen our journalist preview, of course, that we did from the launch last week. I thought it would be pertinent to ask Tom May while we've got him here a couple of those questions. The first one being, who's going to win the tournament?
I think it's going to be a really close tournament. I'm not going to sit on the fence, but I think it's going to be I'm more excited about this tournament, I think, than I have been about watching a Six Nations for a long time. I think there's some exciting sides, some exciting selections. Certainly this week, there's some amazing selections.
Yeah.
I'm going to say England.
Okay.
Partly because I get lynched if I don't, but also because I actually believe at this moment in time they're in a really strong position. They've got great strength in depth, and Eddie Jones seems to be doing everything that it needs to be done to move that team towards a World Cup.
And that England-Ireland game at Twickenham no doubt has a bearing on that, given how strong Ireland will look. We also asked which debutant people are looking forward to. Of course, there's plenty of uncapped players that might feature in the tournament. There have been a few named in their squads for this weekend. Who would be top of your list to keep an eye on?
I think Priso, who's on the bench for the French, he could be amazing when he comes on. I mean, a prop that can make 20, 30, 40 metre line breaks is exhilarating to watch at any time. But Jalibert, I think at 10, 19, I think I have seen him. He ripped Newcastle to pieces. Footwork, handling ability. He's got a kicking game.
Yeah.
He's quite strong mentally, I think. He has been compared to Owen Farrell by some, or obviously clearly a lot younger. But I think he could be one to set that French team alight.
Yeah, I commentated on him in a Bordeaux game against the Dragons, and actually there wasn't anything flashy on. So he kept to doing a fairly straight job, which almost shows that sort of maturity that is worth getting excited about. Headline making match was the next question we asked. That was on the championship as a whole, but ahead of round 1, which one are you looking forward to this weekend?
I'm looking forward to Wales-Scotland.
Yeah.
I think it could be really interesting. Wales obviously under a bit of pressure, missing a few, Webb, Priestland, Bigger. And I think the Scots could do a job there. That could be the headline.
Ooh, I shall be in Cardiff, we shall find out. Another highlight of the weekend you're looking forward to?
There's not many times you'll get an Englishman saying this, but maybe the Welsh singing the national anthem in the Principality
It's always
Stadium.
a beautiful thing.
I was down there last year for England-Wales, and that was sensational. So I'll be looking forward to that. So have that on the box.
They'll have the roof shut. They'll be doing Flower of Scotland there as well. So I'll do my best to get that up on social. Now, the next question I asked a few of our journalists, which I'll ask you now, is whether injuries play a part. Andrew Owen, I know, commented earlier in our live piece about why there are so many. Some journalists we spoke to didn't think they were. They think it's always been this way. Others do think that it absolutely needs focusing on. Where do you stand, obviously, as a player that didn't finish too long ago?
Yeah, look, I think the number of injuries is clearly going to be talked about because it's come to a big tournament and you want the best players playing. That said, I think rugby's it's clearly a collision sport. It's a contact sport, and you are going to lose people to injuries over time. And there's a lot of rugby being played, and I don't think. You can talk about ball in play, the ruck having an effect on the injuries, but is it really that different? I don't think so. I think it probably, it's only a few percent or worse than it ever has been before.
Yeah, okay. Mike Dynan also mentioned, is it going to be the closest Six Nations ever? We say it every year, it seems, but there are quite a few people suggesting bonus points could be more important now than ever, given how relatively recently they've been brought in.
Yeah, I think so. With the French re-emergence of the French, I guess, under Brunel and the selections, we don't quite know what that's going to do to the French side. So they could suddenly be back in the mix. I think if the Scots get off to a good start, they'll be keen to really make a mark in this tournament and progress. I think under Townsend. So from that perspective, You've got Wales who are trying to change the way they're playing the game, and England and Ireland who go in as favourites. I think it's going to be a great competition.
Okay, well, let's talk about the first game of the tournament then. It's going to be Wales against Scotland at the Principality Stadium. We've had Dylan Yates making the comment that the Scarlets are really the thread of that Wales team under Gatland. He's gone with 10 players. Reece Patchell, one of those, coming into the side as well. Then Scotland, 9 Glasgow players. The next biggest represented club, Newcastle Falcons, your old place, with 3. What are your thoughts from the outset?
The first thing I think has to be said is that the main selections at 10 for Wales aren't there. Okay, Patchell's been fantastic form for the Scarlets, but there's no doubt when you've got Biggar and Priestland as your 2 frontline 10s, to lose them is huge. You've lost Rhys Webb, so that axis has been completely and utterly broken down, which is why I think there's clearly the Scarlets are playing brilliantly. But I also think that may have an influence on the number of selections that have come from the Scarlets, and that Gatland's like, right, we need some understanding, some cohesiveness amongst that side. So that's probably the easiest way for him to make his selection. Guys that work together in units, and those units then performing on an international stage. Yeah,
I've got some bad news, by the way. The bacon rolls and baps that were just there have been moved.
They've gone.
So Tom May's
there
temptation.
Are some biscuits behind your head. Oh no, he's bringing some more out.
Good, fresh, lovely. In terms of some stats for you, well, the Welsh starting 15 has 429 caps, a further 160 on the bench. Scotland with 332 starting, 214 on the bench. So a total of 546 for Scotland, 589 by the time you take in all 23, which actually isn't that different. But Wales starting with a bit more experience in their starting 15. Do you think the Scots will be overawed by the occasion, or?
No, I think they'll be looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I think they'll be chomping at the bit. Clearly, what are they missing? 6 props, 3 hookers. Scott Lawson from Newcastle, he hasn't played on the international stage since 2014. He's getting towards the older end of the scale, but there's no doubt when you get that opportunity again, perhaps he might have thought it had gone, you try and take that. Excited to see how Chris Harris goes. He had 21 minutes against Fiji during November, but his offloading game for Newcastle is a great asset for them, especially with the back 3 that they've got, and then you compare the Newcastle back 3 to the Scottish back 3, and they're really exciting as well. The fact that Sean Maitland can't even get in the side is a real pointer to that.
You've got Byron McGuigan in there as well. You've got Finn Russell, obviously, who's going to try and create from 10. We know that the Scots put in a late bid to get the roof closed at the Principality Stadium. They had wanted it open. It needs to be agreed on both sides. Warren Gatland wanted it closed, but it is going to be a fairly wet day, certainly leading up to kick-off. It might dry out by then, but they've gone for the roof closed so they can play a bit, and that suits them, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think you look at their side, their back row as well, a very athletic back row, and they want to shift this Welsh side around. They want to raise the pace of the game, raise the intensity of it, and really take it to the Welsh, and that's stress them and try and make them then play their game, which perhaps they're not used to.
Yeah. Okay. So, next game to look at, France-Ireland, of course, taking place in Paris. The French with Jalibert and Palisse as debutants. No Macalou. Priso on the bench. There's Tourlaine, who's going to be the number 8 from Bordeaux, on the bench. And, you look at the Irish. Bundy Aki with his first start. James Ryan in ahead of Devin Toner. And you've got Joey Carberry on the bench. Conor Murray earning his 60th cap. Plenty to look forward to. And you like the look of this young French side?
Yeah, I'm just excited by it. I've been slightly disappointed by the French over the past few years in terms of the style of play. It's disappointing to see how many problems they've been facing. I guess it's politically within that sort of French system as well.
Yeah.
So to have Jacques Brunel, who left Bordeaux just at Christmas, come in, and he's obviously gone, right, I'm going to stick with my starting 10 from Bordeaux. He's only been playing senior rugby for 1 year. Well, this is his first year. 19, outstanding prospect, and it was. I've watched him play the top 14 several times, but to watch him live, like he is sharp. And takes the ball to the line, will threaten defenders, but has the ability to then shift that point of attack. And I think with that back line, Chavancy. I think Vakatawa on the wing.
Teddy Thomas as well.
Yeah, and I also think Vakatawa might shift into 13 at some point during the Six Nations. He's a real threat there for Racing at times. Palisse at fullback. been doing brilliantly for Cast, and they've obviously been performing quite well in the top 14, find themselves towards the top end of the table.
Yeah. I mean, Morgan Roberts asked a question: the French youth against the Irish strength. Do you think that there is an advantage for Ireland with the strength and experience they've got? Incidentally, stat for you: the Irish have got 8 players with 50 caps or over in their squad. The French, just the one in Guillaume Guirado.
Yeah. We saw one of the fixtures, I think, in the November internationals where the Irish went super big, and there's still a few guys left in from that. Stockdale's a massive lad. Bundyaki and Henshaw. That's probably one of the most abrasive centre pairings that there will be in the Six Nations, and that's a bit of a test, I think, for Jalabert. How do you cope with guys like that running down your channel? They are great players, but then if you want to then kick the game on again and you come up against the Kiwis, the South Africans, they only get bigger. So, I think it's a real test. I see what you did there as well. You're on fire today. Was it Friday? I think the Irish will be excited about how they can progress in this tournament.
Andrew Gilchrist talks about Jacob Stockdale making the comment earlier. His is quite a story. Growing 5 inches in 6 months.
I mean, I could probably do with that, but almost lost to rugby, and then apparently disappeared over one summer and came back and just shot up.
Stood in a grow bag,
but I've seen him play a few times for Ulster. Clearly, a fairly inexperienced player, but a lot of what he has, if you listen to Kieran Campbell, the team manager at Ulster, he's a very natural player. Doesn't necessarily need to be coached too much. And they're the sorts of players you don't want to overcoach either. So it'd be exciting to see him in his first Six Nations. Yeah,
and Joey Carberry coming off the bench. I mean, he's one of those sort of youngsters in the Irish setup who could really do it. Whether he's a sort of a 15 or a 10, they've obviously got Rob Kearney at the back. Is Kearney one of those sort of Lee Halfpenny figures who's clinging on a bit internationally? How much do you think Kearney still offers, and where would you play Carberry?
I think every single team will want to have a solid fullback. You look at all of the teams. There's so much debate about who they should pick. And a lot of people would say, right, let's go for an out-and-out attacking fullback, but actually you need that solidarity at the back. And Rob Kearney provides that. He might be getting a bit older, but Joey Carberry has no doubt got a massive future ahead of him. But using an Eddie Jones term, the finishers, maybe that's where he fits in. And if they can shift that French team around, slightly different to the French team of old where they were a lot bigger, but if they can shift them around, then maybe that's where Carberry fits in.
Cool. All right, let's focus our attention now on England-Italy on Sunday. Or Italy-England, of course, as I should say. It is the big one in Rome, and there's plenty of questions and comments that have come from you guys. I guess the first question is, Tom, are Italy looking good enough? We don't know necessarily, but to win a game in this Six Nations?
I would think not, actually. Okay. I think Conor O'Shea's got a very, very long-term plan. It's not just a 2-3 year job.
Yeah.
And having seen them perform in the Champions Cup, the vast majority of those players are coming from Benetton, and they did it. They scared Toulon. They turned them over. Yeah. They certainly frightened the Scarlets, and then ended up losing. And, the rec result was 23-0, wasn't it, to Bath? But actually, it wasn't a performance.
Wasn't a full reflection. Everyone says that Benetton were pretty good that night.
And individually, they've got some pretty good players, but it never seems quite enough to click for them during the Six Nations, and maybe that's also a reflection of how quickly the other teams are now progressing.
Yeah, we are bringing you this preview ahead of the Italian squad having been announced for this one, but certainly we can touch on a couple of the players. They've got their own Zach Mercer, the former under-20s captain, Marco Riccioni, and Mercer's ended up missing out because of a chest infection, we understand. Would have been interesting if he was fully fit to find out whether Eddie Jones might have put him in there, certainly on the bench. But a couple of other players. There's the evergreen Sergio Parise, Alessandro Zani, he's been on 99 caps for.
Oh man, it's like a cricketer stuck on 99, isn't it? He's been on 99 for 2 years.
Yeah.
So bringing in experience like that's what the Italians need in certain positions. And if they can get those key positions, the spine of the team, then perhaps they can start to build something that'll make them more competitive.
Yeah, no Sato, no Campagnaro, no Esposito. These sorts of players that have been out with injury, big losses.
I guess if they're in other teams, they would be big losses. But and maybe for the Italians, where they don't really have that strength and depth, that means that they are big losses. But would that make them that much more competitive? I doubt.
Conor O'Shea's talked about this week, if England are at their best and Italy are at their best, England win every time. He's very much, making sure that he plays the mind games there to measure expectation. But, we saw the ruckless strategy last year. Do you think he's got any tricks up his sleeve, or is he going to play with a straight bat?
As a spectacle, it wasn't great.
No,
so
it's fun in a way.
So I would hope not from that perspective. But you have to do what you can to try and stop a side like England. It was interesting seeing the press conference and at the launch of the Six Nations, where he just rattled off, oh yeah, this will be Eddie Jones's side. He knows the strength and depth that England are capable of displaying. And I think it's a tough ask for them. Round one, England. Okay, they're at home, but I think this English side will be chomping at the bit.
Yeah, certainly will. Well, let's have a look at that England side. Of course, you hopefully have seen the squad that was announced this morning. Gary Tennant was one of those who made the comment. Should Anthony Watson have been given a run at fullback against Italy? He was also questioning the omission of Don Armand in the England squad overall. But would this have been a game that you might have started Watson at 15?
Yeah, and I think Mike Brown was clearly been struggling for a bit, and that would have been Watson straight in at 15. But maybe and we've talked about it in some of the other previews. The spine of the team needs to have strength and experience, and Mike Brown adds a huge amount of experience. We talk about perhaps Lee Halfpenny not being the most exciting of fullbacks for Wales, but actually he's pretty solid under the high ball.
Yeah.
He's got a good kicking game, and that Rob Kearney's the same.
Yeah.
Maybe the only really outstandingly exciting fullback from an attacking standpoint is Hogg for Scotland.
Yeah.
But I think Watson, he's the future. He just needs to get closer to Mike Brown in those core skills that need to be displayed by a fullback.
Yeah, okay. They're playing Papa Loves Mambo here in Bar Italia. What's not to love about that? We're here in Soho with your Six Nations preview. If you're here, drop into Bar Italia, have a cup of coffee, and tell them we sent you. A couple of other points. Howard Potts is asking whether we'll get a chance to see Tuolangi and Teo in the midfield for England. And a question from Adrian McDonald: is this a defensive midfield that Eddie Jones is fielding, with Farrell and Teo perhaps being seen as more thumpers rather than too graceful or too quick with the feet, but you see Farrell as exciting going forward anyway?
Yeah, I think I see him as a really creative influence amongst that England backline and the England team. I don't see him as a defensive selection. I think having him and George Ford as a pivot system with two decision makers, two sets of eyes and ears, I think that's a perfect combination.
Yeah.
And then you need to have a runner. Now you can have a footwork and pace runner like Jonathan Joseph, or you can have a bit more of a blunt runner like Teo or Tuolangi when he's fit.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting selection of Teo and Tuolangi. Terrifying for opposition.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure the wingers would see too much of the ball.
Well, yeah.
And that might be the issue which would force Eddie Jones not to pick those two.
Yeah. Okay. We mentioned the experience. Dylan Hartley's looking at his 90th cap this week. Chris Robshaw his 60th. There's 689 caps in that England side. Just picking up on another couple of comments that you made earlier. Mark Moss was wondering whether Sam Underhill has been dropped or rested. Ollie Bevington was asking about May or not. I think the Underhill thing is just looking at what he's got available. He's gone for that look of Courtney Laws at 6. Hasn't necessarily worked before, although I did enjoy a comment from a mate of mine who said it's not as bad an experiment as Bergamasco at scrum half. But Laws at 6,
that was dire, by the way.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Laws at 6, like the idea of it or not?
I've played with him at 6, and he's quite a nice asset to have to slot into your back row. Perhaps they can. We're yet to see what happens with him and Atoje. They might then swap round in game.
Yeah.
So that there might be a number on the back.
Yeah.
I think also with the injuries that England have in the back row, that's possibly why they've gone with a bit more experience with Robshaw and Laws.
Yeah.
That then covers Simmons. I think there's no doubt that Underhill's got a massive future, but his game is to slow teams down.
Oh, hello.
Is this the smoothie that you asked for?
Someone's having a juice. Look, there we are.
Odd Lucas on the veg.
I hope you can hear us.
But yeah, perhaps this isn't the game for Underhill. They want to try and they don't necessarily need to slow the Italians down to win.
Yeah.
But that's his game, chopping people down and really getting in over the ball.
Yeah.
I hope it's a nice smoothie.
Can get some fresh carrot going in there.
Yeah.
It's looking good.
Really forcing that down as well.
Yeah. Let's just pause for a moment.
And there we go. Just as it finishes.
Yeah. Good. Johnny May, Jack Nowell. Your thoughts on those two? Because Jack Nowell's on the bench, possibly a bit more of a utility. There was questions as to whether he might pop up in that midfield. He was mentioned in the inside backs in the initial squad list, but Johnny May with the out-and-out gases ended up making the side for Sunday.
Yeah, and I think if Jack Nowell's perhaps got more game time under his belt, then maybe that might be slightly different. They're quite different players.
Yeah.
Jack Nowell, in terms of his work rate, there's not many as a back three that would get through as many contributions as he does. But then you compare him to Johnny May, who's just out and out pace, and there's nothing more threatening on a rugby field than pace.
Yeah.
So it's a nice choice for Eddie Jones to have to make. And I think probably if you go with the guys that are going to come on, Danny Kerr, Jonathan Joseph, Jack Nowell, well, they can certainly get in some holes, and if they really tire that Italian defence out, it could be a pretty exciting last 20 for England.
Yeah, Sam Underhill, George Cruz, they're certainly going to bring on a fair amount of power, and then also the dancing feet as well. I do think there is a chance for England to potentially put their pedal to the metal and absolutely surge away in that last quarter. I think that just about sums it up, don't you?
It's been delightful being here.
In terms of round one, Bar Italia have been wonderful hosts. Our thanks to the Pelledri family. Commiserations, they haven't got Jake to cheer on Sunday because he's not in the squad this time, but we certainly hope for their sake that he features pretty soon. Leave your comments on who you think is going to win this weekend, on the players that you think might show their influence, and keep in touch on punditarena.com and here on the Facebook page for all the latest and the reaction across the weekend. Where are you this weekend?
I'm watching it on the sofa, actually. I'm looking
Very
forward to
nice.
it. Very nice to have a weekend off.
Birthday on Monday?
Birthday on Monday.
21 again.
Birthday smoothie.
Yeah. We'll leave you at this point. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you for a review at the beginning of next week.